Homage to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. We've completed the Karaniyametta Sutta in terms of understanding the knowledge pathway and the instructions of the Buddha on how to cultivate loving kindness or Mettā. A request has been made to provide some short instructions in order to activate the knowledge pathway. So that's what this session will be about. To give these short instructions, one assumes that you've been through the whole session, and so what's been embedded in the Buddha's teaching in the Karaniyametta Sutta is actually lying dormant in oneself. One has understood different parts to this sutta already. So the short instructions actually highlight 15 steps in the meditation, and within each step it's sequential and it's a gradual sort of confirmation that we have the skilled states. The wholesome conduct, the Noble Eightfold Path is activated in order to cultivate Mettā. So we begin with upright. We ask ourselves, are we physically and verbally upright? So we ask, have we killed living beings? We look at, have we taken what hasn't been given? Or have we stolen anything? Do we have sexual misconduct? Or if you refine it, misuse of the sensual faculties. Then you look at your verbal conduct. Has there been lying or false speech? Has there been harsh speech? Has there been divisive speech? And the last one is, has there been frivolous speech? So you go through, you bring up your own examples, and you cleanse of those things. When you cleanse them in meditation, that means you are starting to become upright. When you really see it and you really make a strong determination that these things are akusala, that one doesn't want to cultivate that, and you don't bear in mind anything that's happening in your actual life itself, if those haven't been corrected, but in the meditation you look at it and you realize that in order to walk this path of the Buddha, one needs to purify. And so if you make a strong determination, then you become thoroughly upright. So you're already operating with a higher form of sila, more skilled states. Now, if you actually purify physical and verbal conduct, then you become easy to instruct. And what you activate here is you actually ask yourself, you need to definitely cleanse of derogation, disparaging, envy, stinginess, because you know in order to actually cultivate this particular Brahmavihara, those things actually obstruct you from the cultivation, that one isn't pure enough. One still has limitations on the ability to cultivate. And also, you're starting to untangle this concept of me and mine, that when you derogate, when you envy, when you disparage, when you're stingy, there's some form of stinginess, some form of selfishness, some form of misapprehension about me and mine. And so you do the cleansing again. You actually bring up examples and you ask yourself, is this really supportive of the practice? Can I actually abandon these things in order to cultivate Mettā, in order to walk the Noble Eightfold Path? Once you've cleansed of particularly these 4 things, when it comes to easy to instruct, one becomes more suvacha towards Buddha, towards the teachings of the Buddha. When that happens, one can be gentle. So when you look at the gentleness, mudu, you actually ask yourself, am I physically polite? Am I verbally polite to others? So you look at your gestures. You look at whether you consider yourself the same as somebody else who probably has higher sila. And you don't do that because you can see that there are examples where you aren't as gentle. Same with the verbal, that one looks at any examples where you are impolite, because that means you're not gentle. And so you become more malleable when you actually clean that up. Once you clean up this gentleness, when you're actually gentle, then one can be humble, as in not arrogant. So you look at that. When you're not arrogant, you're not giving value to certain things. You're not going to tolerate any things that would bring you out of these skilled states. So you restrain yourself, and in order to be not arrogant, again, it's a case of refining, not taking things as me and mine. When one is not arrogant, as in one is humble, then what happens is you actually understand, I need to control the sense faculties. I don't want it to burn. I don't want to go towards akusala because I've already cleaned of these skilled states. And so when it comes to santindriyo, this controlling the sense faculties, you see the danger of burning. You see the danger of not wanting to make contact, not wanting to actually have the wrong view. And so at that point, when you control the sense faculties, you become prudent because you know the distinction between kusala and akusala, the skillful and the unskillful. And so you don't want to actually cultivate any mind states that come in that are greedy, that have ill will or resentment, or who are or what are harmful or cruel. And so prudent and wise means that one is guarding that, and you do so by guarding the sense doors, and you do that also by making sure your effort is there. You have right view. Now when you're prudent and wise, that's a very skilled spot. Even at this point, you can start cultivating loving kindness. But what you do is you say, if I'm prudent, then I can be courteous. So in your mind, with this final part of courteousness, because we've already looked at the physical and verbal courteousness when we're looking at gentle, we look at the mental now, mental courteousness or politeness. And we ask ourselves, are we actually also polite in the mind? Do we bear any ill will towards others? At this point, you can already start to look at, rather than personal dukkha, you look at overall dukkha. You start to see that we are all the same, that there's no reason to harbor any ill will towards others, any hostility, any grudges towards others, any remainder of that. And if you do, you bring up the examples and you cleanse and purify it, because you don't want to harbor that towards anybody else. You understand we are all brothers and sisters in old age, sickness and death. If you have that, then you can move on to not yearning to associate with families or groups. Kule suana nugito. In this step, what you're saying is you actually see no separation. You don't exclude anyone, and you don't particularly hanker after specific groups, whether it's your family, whether it's particular work colleagues, whether it's particular race, gender, sexual identity, politics, sports, any type of association that you hanker for, that you have a strong identification with, you give it up. You understand you can't cultivate limitless, immeasurable metta if you have these boundaries. So Buddha encourages to actually look at it. Really, it's looking at not taking as me and mine, that you don't misapprehend taking as me and mine. And so if you understand this, if you purify for it, then you become qualified to actually cultivate loving kindness. So you take extra time on this step to actually remove any boundaries towards anyone. If you have that, you are qualified, as the Buddha says, to actually spread kindness to others, that you wish people to be happy and to be free of suffering, to be safe. You wish this from the point of view that if you are in samsara, you are not safe. You are still at the mercy of conditions, constructions, and you start to see the death-bound nature of all conditions. And so you wish safety for people from that place. You also wish safety and happiness. You wish more supreme happiness for people, the happiness that is not temporary, the happiness that doesn't slide. Constructed conditions will always slide. So if you have that understanding, you wish happiness on all your brothers and sisters in old age, sickness and death. And so you wish to all kinds of living beings, all shapes and sizes. Those you can see and those you can't see. Those that are within your vicinity and those that are not within your vicinity. You wish all. you wish all beings. And then you come to Biya Rosana Patigasanya, so perceiving anger or ill will towards others. Buddha asks us now to look at our mental state of mind, to actually refine that if there is ill will thinking, if there is still harmful thoughts towards others, where one still holds grudges, bring up those examples and purify it. What Buddha is saying here is that you start to see that we are all subject to old age, sickness and death, particularly that all people, excuse me, all living beings are death bound. When you truly see that, then you actually see, why am I still holding on to anger and ill will? Why is there still hatred? And so you cleanse it. You step beyond that. There are no longer any limitations. So then when you do that, you take into your mind like a mother to a child. Like a mother to a child, you realize my physical virtue is upright. My verbal virtue is upright. My mental virtue is becoming upright. So from a mother to a child, there is more perfected skill states. And that's where you wish loving kindness from, where you wish metta from. Do you wish that upwards to all the devas and brahmas? Or you wish it below or downwards to all the lower realms that are suffering? You wish that across to all beings that are within this realm. And in all postures you understand, when you're free of drowsiness, the thinamitta, the dullness and drowsiness, when you're free of it in any of the postures, you can cultivate this metta. You recognize that you can resolve to remember that this is what Buddha calls the divine abode, that this is noble living, where you have physical virtue, verbal virtue, mental virtue. You have these, at this point, 8 skilled states. And so you wish from this place of 8 skilled states. Now you abandon any further wrong views and you have virtue. So with this virtue, you are actually saying now, what else is left? What else is left? You have 9 skilled states now. You are no longer taking wrong views. You have the physical virtue, verbal virtue, and you have almost got all the mental virtue. The only thing left is covetousness. So what is covetousness? It's where you take sensual pleasures. You still see them as me and mine. You still see them that you can get some temporary happiness from them. So you decide to abandon it. That what's the point of going out for sensual pleasures? They're temporary. They're unlasting. They're death-bound. They're not worth taking as me and mine. So you abandon that. So in that way, when you abandon sensual pleasures in the form realm, you understand that they're not worth taking as me and mine. So you remove the covetousness. So now you have 10 skilled states. And with that, you understand you don't come back into a mother's womb. That there's nothing here to come back to. Now when you cultivate this meditation, it's as simple as that. It's quite straightforward. It's actually a purification process, and it's actually the development of insight in that process. So when you do so, you make sure you follow the sequence and you purify for actually the 10 skilled states or the 10 wholesome conduct, dasakusala. If you do so, then you can actually cultivate quite a high level of metta towards all living beings. You actually see all living beings as brothers and sisters in death, brothers and sisters in old age, sickness and death. And you develop the insight about the Buddha's noble truths. So that is the meditation. It can be done by anyone. If there's anything that hasn't been understood in these short instructions, go back to the detailed session. And one wishes that to all living beings. If you understand the sutta in Pali better, then you can also use this particular slide. It also has the 15 steps. So you're actually activating Uju, Suju, Suvacha, Mudu, Anatimani, Santindriyo, Chanipiko, applicable kulesu anunukito, that gets you to step 9. 10 is then you can wish sukinowa kemino honto sabe sata bhavantu sukitata. Then 11 is biarosana. 12 is patikasanya. You actually refrain from those mental ill will and anger or hatred. Then silava, so you actually correct more virtue, so more skill states. Then kamesu vinaya gedang. Then nahi jatu kapaseyang punarayatiti, so that's 13, 14, 15. So with that, the thing to understand with this, it's a sequential process. You're actually activating the knowledge pathway. And in doing so, the other thing to bear in mind is that if you get from 1 to 7, so you go all the way from upright, you're purifying all the way to becoming prudent, that's very skilled. One can actually wish loving kindness from that point. That's very good. That is, if you can't go all the way to 15, that's still good. Start to cultivate that. There's nothing wrong with gradually developing that. But if you can go all the way to 15, that's great. That's even better, because that's a more purified place of cultivating metta, and you develop the insight quite strongly. So hope this is helpful, and this is the way you can actually cultivate the meditation. Te rawang saranai. Wish you all well.